The neighborhood finally felt alive again. Lawns were green, driveways clean, and the soft hum of weekend barbecues floated through the air. After months of meetings, arguments, and uncertainty, everyone was breathing easier. Mrs. Collins often stood on her porch at dusk, watching kids chase bicycles down the street. Peace had returned, but it was a fragile peace, one that depended on trust. She hoped it would last. Yet in the quiet calm of the evening breeze, something invisible was already moving toward them, something that would soon test their unity once more. A week later, an official email arrived in every inbox. "Welcome your new HOA president, Mr. Brian Turner." His profile photo showed a confident smile, perfect suit, and polished resume. The board praised his tech background and leadership skills. At first, everyone was optimistic. A younger president meant fresh ideas, digital systems, better communication, maybe even more transparency. The first few days felt exciting. Residents chatted about online voting and neighborhood upgrades. But behind those glowing screens, a new kind of authority was quietly building its roots. The first community meeting under Brian's leadership took place on a bright Saturday morning. The hall was full, sunlight pouring through tall windows as he took the stage with practiced ease. "Friends," he began, "our neighborhood is the pride of the city. To keep it that way, we must evolve." The screen behind him lit up with a presentation titled, "The New Rules for Better Living." One by one, slides appeared. Noise restrictions after 7 p.m., limited parking hours, mandatory house color guidelines. His tone was calm, persuasive, almost charming. But as people listened, smiles faded. The freedom they had fought for suddenly felt smaller, boxed inside tidy bullet points. Mrs. Collins raised her hand, voice steady but firm. "Brian, don't you think these rules are too strict? We just rebuilt this community's trust. People need space, not surveillance." Brian paused, adjusted his tie, and replied smoothly, "Order brings peace, Mrs. Collins. Without structure, chaos returns." The crowd murmured. Some nodded, others looked uneasy. The same uncertainty that once haunted them crept back into the room like a shadow no one wanted to name. Over the next few days, the changes arrived fast. Notices slipped into mailboxes, fines appeared for minor issues, a garden too wild, lights too bright, trash bins left out too long. The WhatsApp group overflowed with frustration. "Since when is my fence color a problem?" someone wrote. But replies were slow. Brian rarely answered. He was reviewing policies, implementing systems, always just out of reach. Neighbors stopped waving. Conversations shortened. The air that had once felt free now carried tension again. Determined to understand, Mrs. Collins decided to visit him. His office, once warm and cluttered with community posters, now glowed with screens and security feeds. Graphs and data dashboards covered the walls, a digital map of the entire neighborhood. "Brian, this isn't leadership," she said quietly. "It's surveillance." He didn't even look up. "Order requires sacrifice," he replied, typing fast. "I'm saving this community from itself." His words echoed through the sterile room. For the first time, Mrs. Collins realized that their new leader didn't want cooperation. He wanted control. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. Residents whispered about black SUVs cruising the streets at night, flashing cameras mounted near every lamppost. Some said a private firm had been hired to enforce compliance. People who once took evening walks now stayed indoors. Even the dogs barked less. Safety had been replaced with suspicion, and the neighborhood that once felt like home now felt like a monitored zone. One cold evening, a few brave residents gathered outside Mrs. Collins's porch light. Their voices trembled with anger and fear. "He's watching everything," one man said. "We can't even breathe without permission." Another woman added, "This isn't a community anymore, it's his kingdom." Mrs. Collins listened, her eyes filled with the same quiet determination she had shown months ago. "Then we'll do what we did before," she said softly. "We'll stand together." A flicker of hope spread through the small crowd, like a candle lit in darkness. Over the next week, a movement quietly formed. The voice of the residents. There were no big signs or protests, just neighbors helping neighbors, collecting evidence, noting inconsistencies in fines and expenses. They built an anonymous online forum, shared screenshots, and discussed fair solutions. This wasn't rebellion. It was restoration. Mrs. Collins knew that rules were necessary, but only when built on respect. We're not fighting the system, she told them. We're saving it from being abused. As night fell on the final scene, Brian stood alone in his office, the soft glow of monitors reflecting off his glasses. Outside, the streets looked calm, maybe too calm. Down below, groups of neighbors walked slowly, whispering, united once again. Brian watched them and smiled faintly, whispering, "So it begins." The camera pulled back, showing rows of peaceful houses, lights flickering under a pale moon. The air was still, yet heavy with the promise of another storm. The fight